The midnight visitor. The sound of thunder woke Jackson Hayes from a restless sleep. Or at least that's what he thought it was until he realized the night was perfectly clear, stars scattered across the midnight sky like diamonds on black velvet. The crash came again, metal on soil, a hissing release of pressure, followed by a soft, pained moan. Jackson scrambled from his bed and hurried to the window of his small rental house on the outskirts of Riverdale. His property backed up against acres of woodland, which was precisely why he'd chosen it. Peace, quiet, and isolation had always been his preferences. Now, something was disturbing that carefully cultivated solitude. A faint glow emanated from the edge of his yard, where tall pines met his unmowed lawn. His heart hammered against his ribs as he grabbed the baseball bat he kept beside his bed, a relic from his high school days when he'd briefly entertained athletic aspirations before academics consumed his life. "This is how people die in horror movies," he muttered to himself, slipping into shoes and a jacket over his pajamas. Yet curiosity overpowered his instinct for self-preservation. 4 years of studying astrophysics had left him with an insatiable hunger for the unknown, even when that unknown crashed into his backyard at 2 a.m. The cool night air nipped at his face as Jackson stepped outside, bat raised defensively. The glow pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie shadows across the lawn. As he approached, what he saw made him drop the bat entirely. It wasn't a meteor or crashed satellite, as his scientist's mind had initially rationalized. It was a pod, roughly the size of a small car, its metallic surface etched with symbols unlike any language he'd ever encountered. Steam hissed from vents along its sides as the metal cooled rapidly in the night air. More shocking than the craft itself was its occupant, who had managed to crawl several feet from the wreckage before collapsing. Jackson's breath caught in his throat. Humanoid but unmistakably alien. Her skin shimmered with a faint opalescent quality, shifting between pale blue and lavender. Hair like liquid silver framed a face whose features were hauntingly familiar yet subtly different, eyes slightly larger, cheekbones more pronounced, ears with a slight point. She was injured. A substance that resembled mercury more than blood seeped from a wound on her side, glittering under the moonlight. "Help," she whispered, her voice musical and strange before her eyes, irises the color of amethysts, rolled back and she lost consciousness. Jackson stood frozen, his entire worldview shattering and reconstructing itself in seconds. An alien, a real, living alien, was bleeding in his backyard. Years of scientific training kicked in, overriding his shock. He needed to help her, whoever she was. If she was injured, the biological imperatives of tending wounds might be universal, or they might not be. He had no way of knowing, but he couldn't just leave her there. With careful movements, Jackson lifted the alien woman. She was lighter than he expected, despite being nearly as tall as his 6-foot frame. Her skin felt warm beneath his fingers, warmer than human norm, and had a texture like velvet over steel, soft but with an underlying resilience. Once inside, Jackson laid her on his couch, his mind racing through options. Hospital? Absolutely not. Government authorities? Even worse idea if every sci-fi movie he'd ever watched had any truth to it. He was on his own. The alien stirred as he examined her wound. It wasn't deep, but the strange mercury-like blood continued to seep steadily. Her eyes fluttered open, fixing on him with startling clarity. "Where am I?" she asked, her English perfect but accented with musical tones that no human throat could produce. "Earth," Jackson replied, then realized how ridiculous that sounded. "I mean my house. You crashed in my backyard." She attempted to sit up, wincing. "I must have miscalculated the landing trajectory. The guidance systems were damaged during my escape." "Escape," Jackson repeated, retrieving his first aid kit from the bathroom. "What's your name, are you? I mean, you're not from here, are you?" A smile flickered across her face, revealing teeth that gleamed like opals. "My designation is Nyxariella Tandorian, but you may call me Nyx. And no, I am not from your world. I come from a planet you would call Altaris, though that is not our name for it." "I'm Jackson," he replied, approaching with bandages and antiseptic. "I don't know if these will work on you, but I'd like to try and help." Nyx examined the supplies with curious eyes. "Your medicines may not be compatible with my physiology, but the wound is superficial. My body will heal itself given time." "What happened to you? Why were you escaping?" She tensed, eyes darting toward the window. "Those who pursue me cannot find me here, not yet, but they will come eventually." Her gaze returned to Jackson, intense and searching. "You should not have helped me. I have brought danger to your doorstep." Jackson shrugged, attempting nonchalance despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "Too late now. Besides, I've always wanted to meet an alien." "You say that with remarkable calm," Nix observed. "Trust me, I'm freaking out internally," Jackson admitted. "But I've spent my life studying the stars. Somehow I always knew we weren't alone." He paused, watching as she pressed a small device to her wound that sealed it with a soft hiss. "What I never expected was that aliens would look so human." Nix's expression turned solemn. "There are reasons for that which I cannot explain now. Rest assured, not all cosmic life resembles your form. I come from a species that shares certain evolutionary parallels with humans." As the night deepened, Jackson learned fragments of Nix's story. She was a scientist from Altaris, a world ruled by a militaristic faction called the Hegemony. Her research into interspecies genetic compatibility had drawn unwanted attention when she discovered something the rulers of her world wanted to suppress: a connection between Altarians and humans that challenged their supremacist ideology. "They will come for me," she repeated as dawn approached, her wound now a faint silvery line. "Commander Dravex will not give up the hunt. He believes my research threatens the very foundation of Altarian society." "How long do we have?" Jackson asked, resigned to the fact that he was now part of this cosmic drama. "Days, perhaps weeks if we're fortunate. Their tracking technology is advanced, but traversing the void between stars takes time, even for us." Jackson ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Then we have time to prepare. I have a colleague, Professor Wallace, who might help us. He's eccentric enough to believe this without reporting you to authorities." Nick studied him with those unnervingly beautiful eyes. "Why would you risk yourself for me, Jackson of Earth? You know nothing of me or my world." He considered her question carefully. Why indeed? Was it scientific curiosity, the thrill of discovery, or something more instinctual, a connection he felt the moment he lifted her from the ground? "Because it's the right thing to do," he finally answered. "And because I've spent my life looking up at the stars, wondering if someone was looking back. Now I know someone was." The first light of morning filtered through the windows as they talked, casting the room in a golden glow. Outside, the crashed pod had initiated some kind of self-destruct protocol, dissolving into a fine ash that the wind was already carrying away. By sunrise, there would be no evidence of Nix's arrival except her presence in Jackson's living room. "I'll need clothes," she observed, looking down at her damaged flight suit. "And we should disguise my appearance." Jackson assessed her. With her silvery hair and opalescent skin, she would certainly attract attention. "Sunglasses for those distinctive eyes, maybe a hat and some makeup for your skin. As for clothes, I might have some things that would fit you." As he gathered supplies, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that his life had irreversibly changed. Just yesterday, he'd been an ordinary astrophysics researcher, his most exciting moments coming from new telescope data or particularly insightful academic papers. Now, he was harboring an alien fugitive with enemies across the stars. Nix watched him move about the house, her expression a mixture of wariness and hope. "You still have time to change your mind, Jackson. Tell me to leave, and I will find another way." He paused, arms full of potential disguise components. The rational part of his brain screamed that this was madness, that he should indeed ask her to leave. But something deeper, something he couldn't explain, made the decision for him. "You're staying," he said with newfound determination. "We'll figure this out together." As sunlight spilled fully into the room, illuminating Nix's otherworldly features, Jackson knew he was looking at both the greatest discovery and the greatest danger humanity had ever faced. Hidden among stars. The morning light filtered through Jackson's kitchen window as he watched Nix examine a banana with scientific curiosity. 2 days had passed since her crash landing. Days spent teaching her the basics of human society while developing plans to keep her hidden. "Your fruit lacks crucial minerals," she commented, taking another bite despite her criticism. Her appearance had been transformed with remarkable effectiveness. Jackson's baseball cap covered her silvery hair, now dyed a more human brown with box dye. Makeup concealed her opalescent skin, and sunglasses hid her striking violet eyes. In his oversized clothes, she could almost pass for human. "Professor Wallace will be here soon," Jackson said, checking his phone nervously. "Remember our story, you're a visiting researcher from Norway." Nix nodded, practicing her cover accent. I am from Oslo, studying astronomical anomalies. The musical quality of her voice remained, but they'd worked on dampening it. The doorbell rang, making them both jump. Jackson opened it to reveal Professor Franklin Wallace, a disheveled man in his 60s with wild gray hair and perpetually smudged glasses. His former academic advisor and the only person Jackson trusted with something this monumental. This better be important, Hayes, Wallace grumbled, stepping inside. Pulling me away from the observatory during... He stopped mid-sentence, seeing Nix. Even with her disguise, something about her presence radiated otherworldliness. Franklin, Jackson said carefully, what I'm about to show you will change everything we know about astrophysics, xenobiology, and possibly human history. Nix removed her sunglasses, revealing her amethyst eyes. The professor stumbled backward, clutching the wall for support. God in heaven, he whispered. Not quite, Nix replied with a slight smile. 2 hours later, Wallace sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around his 5th cup of coffee. This changes everything, he muttered for perhaps the 20th time. Everything we thought we knew about cosmic development, convergent evolution, the Drake equation. Professor, Jackson interrupted, we need your help, not your existential crisis. Wallace nodded, pulling himself together. Right, she needs somewhere safer than this. My cabin in the mountains, it's isolated, well-supplied, has its own solar power system off the grid. That would be ideal, Nix said. I need time to complete my analysis of your planet's technological capabilities. If Dravex comes with a full squadron, we'll need defensive measures. And I need access to proper equipment, Jackson added. If her people can track her across space, we need to understand how and potentially mask it. My laboratory equipment could help, Wallace offered. But we'll need to move it discreetly, and we'll need a third set of hands we can trust. Jackson tensed. The fewer people who know about this, the better. My research assistant, Olivia Reed, Wallace explained. Brilliant mind, completely trustworthy, and conveniently specializes in quantum communications. Exactly what we need to understand how Nix's people might be tracking her. Later that evening, they were packing Jackson's old SUV when he noticed Nix staring at the night sky, her expression unreadable. Missing home, he asked, joining her. Contemplating distance, she replied. From here my star appears as merely a faint point of light, yet it harbors billions of lives, an entire civilization with its own history, conflicts, and dreams. She turned to him. Your people don't truly comprehend what awaits you among the stars, Jackson. Is it all like your world? Militaristic regimes hunting scientists? She smiled sadly. No, there is beauty beyond imagining, worlds where the very concept of conflict never evolved, species that communicate through color and light rather than sound. Her expression darkened. But there are also empires that would view your planet as nothing more than resources to be harvested. The weight of her words hung between them. Jackson realized he was glimpsing not just an alien visitor, but a window into humanity's future among the stars, filled with both wonder and peril. We should go, he said finally. It's a 3-hour drive to Wallace's cabin. The journey through darkness took them into increasingly remote terrain. Nix watched the passing landscape with fascination. Forests, small towns, and finally the winding mountain roads leading to Wallace's private retreat. Your planet has remarkable diversity, she observed. On Altaris, centuries of climate engineering have created more uniform environments. You engineer your planet's climate. We had to after the Great Burning, she explained. A catastrophe not unlike the one your world now faces with climate change, but more severe. It nearly destroyed our civilization 3 centuries ago. The cabin appeared ahead, a sturdy structure nestled among towering pines. Solar panels gleamed in the moonlight atop the roof, and a small observatory dome crowned one wing. Wallace built this place as his personal research station, Jackson explained as they unloaded their supplies. Off-grid, self-sufficient, and with enough scientific equipment to make NASA jealous. Inside, the cabin was a curious blend of rustic comfort and cutting-edge technology. Wood-paneled walls housed sophisticated computer systems, and a large central room had been converted into a laboratory. Your professor's dwelling is unconventional, Nix commented, examining the strange juxtaposition. Wallace has always believed scientific progress happens at the fringes, Jackson replied, setting down the last box. He built this place to work without institutional constraints. They settled in for the night, with Nix taking the small bedroom while Jackson claimed the couch. Sleep eluded him as his mind raced with everything that had happened. His ordinary life had vanished the moment Nix crashed into his backyard, replaced by a reality where humanity was just one species among countless others in a populated galaxy. Morning brought the arrival of Olivia Reed, a woman in her early 30s with keen eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Her initial shock at meeting Nix quickly transformed into focused scientific curiosity. The quantum entanglement principles you're describing would revolutionize our understanding of physics, she told Nix as they set up equipment in the main laboratory. You're saying your people can establish communication links across light years without delay. The technology is called quantum fold resonance, Nix explained, and it's how Dravex will likely track me. My escape pod would have left a unique resonance signature that their vessels can follow. Then we need to mask that signature, Olivia concluded, already sketching designs for a potential interference device. Days passed in a blur of scientific collaboration. Nix shared knowledge that advanced their understanding of physics by decades, while carefully withholding information that might be dangerous in human hands. Jackson found himself deeply impressed by her ethical boundaries. She wanted to help without disrupting humanity's natural development. On the fourth night, while Wallace and Olivia slept, Jackson found Nix in the observatory, using Wallace's telescope to scan the stars. Looking for signs of pursuit, he asked. Observing constellations from a new perspective, she replied, but her tension was evident. Jackson, there's something I haven't told you, something about why my research was so threatening to the hegemony. He joined her at the telescope. I've been wondering about that. Nix hesitated, then spoke carefully. My work involves interspecies genetic compatibility across sentient races. I discovered that Altarians and humans share certain genetic markers that shouldn't be possible through convergent evolution alone. She met his eyes. Our species are connected, Jackson. Somehow, across the vast distances of space, our evolutionary paths are linked. That's impossible, he whispered, though he knew enough biology to understand the implications. Unless there was contact in the distant past, she finished. Or unless both our species were influenced by something else entirely. The revelation hung between them like an invisible thread, connecting not just their conversation, but potentially their entire evolutionary histories. Is that why you chose Earth? Jackson asked. Why you came here specifically? Nix's gaze returned to the stars. I needed a place to hide, yes, but I also needed to continue my research. Earth was the perfect destination for both purposes. She turned back to him. What I never expected was to crash in the backyard of someone who would understand its significance. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp beeping from the monitoring equipment they'd set up. Jackson rushed to the computer, heart racing. Something just entered Earth's upper atmosphere, he said, reading the data. It's small, possibly a probe, and it's using technology that our satellites can't properly track. Nix's expression hardened. They've found me faster than I anticipated. That's a scout drone. Dravex is testing Earth's defensive capabilities before committing his main vessel. How long do we have? Days at most. The drone will map your planet's military installations, communication networks, and potential resistance points.